results during the trip. Well, joining me live now on LBC News is Erol Morkoc. He's the Vice Chair for External Communications for Republicans Overseas UK. Erol, good to have you with us this morning. Now, we know that Scotland holds a special place in the President's heart, of course, through the strong links with his mother. What kind of welcome do you anticipate that he'll have? Because he has been fairly mixed in the past.
Well, yes, the public welcome oftentimes doesn't match what we see privately. And privately, we feel very welcome as Republicans in Scotland, Republicans overseas, regardless of your affiliation. But in public, he's going to be facing protests, the same protests he's faced every time he went there. You saw that already protesters went and put a sign in front of his sign tying him to Epstein. They said twinned with Epstein Island. So we expect the same sort of headline grabbing protesters, and it's to be expected considering that. But also we expect there to be some pro-Trump people, especially in those towns where he has created jobs, he has created wealth. He's a pro-oil president in Aberdeen and has some connection there. So there certainly is some domestic support, but obviously those people are going to be inside the building probably more likely than they are outside. Outside, you're only going to see the negative, and Donald Trump is going to drive right past that and ignore it.
I mean, you say there's going to be protests, the same old protests. Why do you think some oppose him so strongly?
Oh, I mean, just his combative personality, right? I mean, we've all had 10 years of this Donald Trump experience, and I think it's very clear to everybody that Donald Trump, I mean, from his own writings for the last 20 years, doesn't back down from anything. And a lot of people find that off-putting. A lot of people find his brash persona, especially not to be favorable to some European sensibilities. And certainly Donald Trump doesn't back away from that. When he's put in that character role, he steps into it, and that turns people off. People sometimes see somebody who's in some ways arrogant and some ways brash, and they fail to look at the entirety of the person or understand, the deeper meaning. And because of that, Donald Trump will always have people who look at him with this sort of complete castigation and won't give him a chance. But people who do, and people who actually follow him and look at his entirety of his career and his actions, I think they have a much more favorable viewpoint. But oftentimes, he's in a foreign country. People aren't following him too closely. And the media that they are receiving oftentimes, at least from our perspective, is negative, at least majority towards Trump. And so that, I think, fuels it, along with the fact that he is very anti some of these ecological things that are, very close to Scottish people's hearts. I went to my postgrad in St. Andrews. I know how much wind power and this kind of stuff mattered to my classmates who went and worked in those sectors. And you see Donald Trump obviously very against those things, promoting hydrocarbons. So those kind of things turn off the local populace. And I think that's the crux of the issue that he deals with there.
So do you think then that those protesters are wasting their time? Because it looks as though he's probably not going to pay much attention to them at all.
Well, no, I never feel that anybody who goes out and makes their voice heard is wasting their time, and it should be something that you're proud of and then you stand up for. And Donald Trump, maybe he drives past it and he has thick skin, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't at least hear it through maybe filters, but he does hear it. And that's your goal as a protester, to try to at least make some impact, let that be known. And Donald Trump is a deal maker, and so if you want something, work with him in some context. Maybe he will be more favorable. Let's say, for example, I mean, it sounds ridiculous. You want to keep these windmills going and you want Donald Trump's support on some random trade deal. Give him the British Open at his golf course. It sounds ridiculous. I understand that. But, if you want to keep the windmills, work with this guy in some ways. Don't be a failure if you work with him where you have a great opportunity to here. He's a very vulnerable situation where you have a prime minister who can take advantage of that with Trump's Anglophile sort of positive attitude. You play this right, and you can definitely get out of him what you want out of him. And I think that's the goal here, to make deals, not to castigate each other, which is, of course, what will go on with the protesters.
Erol, let's very quickly touch on something else that you mentioned, which is Epstein, because this visit will certainly give them a break from all of that talk regarding Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files. I mean, he maintains it's fake news, but there's a real pressure in the US for those details to be released. What do you make of all of this?
Yeah, it's a really serious situation, and Pam Bondi didn't do President Trump any favors with sort of the way that she conducted this. Donald Trump came into this situation, and this is the sins of the U.S. government and what they did before Trump was part of the government. And I think Donald Trump's natural inclination to sort of try to put himself away from that is not a good idea. It creates the Streisand effect. Everybody's name, who's anybody, is in those files in some way. In terms of either it's, a connection or a birthday card. As you see, there was a birthday card written by President Clinton as well as apparently President Trump. We don't know the validity of that, but these kind of things. So it ends up to be an embarrassing thing. But in the situation here, Donald Trump needs to realize that his base, especially the people who are going to be there for him in the midterms, are not going to accept the idea that this is, John Brennan and James Clapper and some Democrat hoax. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison for a real reason, and I think that's been made loud and clear to President Trump. He's changing his tune on that and realizing, even though this wasn't his original sin, as before when this happened before when he was the government, he is the president, and the buck stops with him, and it's going to be incumbent upon him to definitely take this more seriously. And we see that with him tasking Pam Bondi and the DOJ with further connections with Ghislaine, and obviously the general sentiment has really pushed against him when he made those comments. So I think it's going to come back around. He made a mistake trying to campaign on it so hard if he wasn't going to take it seriously. And I think he's finding out that his base is not going to bend in any way on that topic.
Erol, good speaking to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed for your time. There's Erol Morkoc, who's Vice Chair for External Communications for Republicans Overseas UK.